Well, welcome to our first, hopefully, annual Faith and Science Conference. We're hoping to be able to continue to do this annually. I think it's a great addition for Nauvoo, but also for the Midwest. You know, we have things that are going on in Quad Cities, and we have some of the people responsible for those here today, and then we also have activities in St. Louis, but there's not a lot directly in our area, and so we hope to become kind of a hub for that. And in fact, that's one of our goals with the new building to the east of the Flood Museum, what we're calling the Discovery Center, is to be able to have our own meeting space where we can have labs set up and things like that. Because tomorrow we'll have some additional equipment in here and be able to show some additional things that we're working on with the museum. But we're just grateful to have all of you here today. In setting the theme for this conference, and I actually did, in the messages that I sent out to all those who confirmed, I did remind everybody that our official curriculum for this conference is the Bible. So if there's any concerns or questions or anything, that's our curriculum, that's our source. And as I mentioned, we'll have the question and answers at the end. Our mission at the Flood Museum and the Learning Institute Foundation, which is our nonprofit, is actually pretty straightforward: to strengthen believers and those who want to believe. We really think that it's important that believers have access to the information that will strengthen their faith, help them to be prepared for the assaults that come from the world as those who practice the religions of atheism, secularism, scientism, and evolution as they attack their faith. That they need to be well prepared and armed. And so we want to strengthen believers and those who want to believe. I believe that faith is a choice. Starts first with the choice. You have to want to believe. If you don't want to believe and you don't want to seek Christ, chances are nobody's going to be able to convince you otherwise. The intellectual arguments, as powerful as they can't change a heart. Only the Spirit can do that. And so our mission is to strengthen believers and those who want to believe. And you'll see often us using the phrase, it's okay to believe. Too many of our youth believe that if they follow the Bible, and if they believe what the Bible says, that they're ignorant, or they're backward, or they're old-fashioned. And as you'll see through this conference, we hope, it's anything but old-fashioned. And in fact, the evidence continues to mount. For those who have eyes to see, it's there. And those who willfully, as Peter says, turn their back on it, will then fall into disbelief. If they willfully reject the truth and the knowledge that it contains, they will be left to their own devices. So, what happened to hope? And this, as a kind of a foundational piece, I hope sets the tone for our conference. One of the great messages, I think, that exists in the Scriptures is the message of hope. That into a fallen and corrupt world came a Savior and Redeemer. Hope. But two polls that were conducted in the last 20 years paint a daunting picture for us. And the data that surrounds it is often used to imply that the more education an individual has, the more likely they are to reject faith and embrace science. And that the less educated a person is, the more likely they are to believe in God. That's the world's standard mantra. If you just knew more, you believe in God less. If you aren't so educated, then you'll believe in God. I didn't mention what my background is. I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy. Then my education was in computer science and user interface design. I was a business and marketing and manager in technical industries. And when I retired, I went back to school and I received my master's in theology from Liberty University and then my PhD from Newburgh Theological Seminary. Because I realized that in spite of the fact that I had spent my whole life learning, that I wanted to be better prepared and better empowered to teach those things that I thought were the most important. And that I would have access to people to do that. And like it or not, in this world, the more education you have, credentials, the easier it is in some circles to be accepted. So the more education didn't drive me away from God. So when we look at the data more closely, we notice another fact. As individuals progress through their education and are more fully indoctrinated into the anti-God versions of science, and the greatest representation of those, of course, is evolution and scientism, the less likely they are to believe in God and to attend church regularly. The relationship is clear, and I learned quantifiable. One day I had been pondering on this, and I've been routinely presenting my belief that evolution and scientism are not victimless crimes. There actually is a price that's being paid. And I realized that if I was accurate in that it should be measurable. There should be a way to quantify that. It shouldn't just be a belief. So I began the research, and a 2005 Gallup poll, as you see there, revealed that as education continued with its accompanying exposure to the anti-God evolutionary teachings, church attendance decreased. 72% of those who attend church regularly believe that God created human beings when they began their education. 72%. That in itself is a little bit scary, but still 72%. Which echoes some of the research that I had done as I was writing my book, A Flood of Hope. I was surprised to learn that fully 30% of those who profess to be Christian and regular church attenders weren't sure that the Bible was actually true. And the way I measured that was by asking them, was David actually a king in Israel? Was Adam really the first man? Did a global flood really inundate the earth? Those basic facts that are presented in the Bible. And as I say, over 30% didn't believe that those things actually happened. They weren't confident. So my own personal experience echoed this 2005 Gallup poll. By the time people finished, the same group completed their higher education, only 44% believed that God created human beings. Among those who didn't attend church regularly, the numbers are even scarier. It's surprising that those who don't attend church regularly, still 48% when they started their education process believe that God created humans. 48%. Not bad. After they completed their education, 9%. Only 9%. Something's happening. It's not simply a matter of the smarter I get, the less I need God. The 2017 Pew Research poll was equally compelling. It showed that 66% of those who began their college experience believed in God, while upon graduation the number declined to 45%. So the numbers are comparable, but the decline in belief of those entering the education system at the higher level can be related to what we call the generational effect. You'll notice that the one poll was conducted in 2005, and now their kids start attending college in 2017, and the belief in evolution has actually increased and the belief in God has decreased. And we call that the generational effect, where now these people go home and that's what they teach to their kids. And so when they get into the schools, it's even easier for the schools to then have an influence, a negative influence. Teaching evolution and scientism, particularly in Christian universities, unfortunately, but it's not, as I mentioned, a victimless crime. Faith and the hope it offers is negatively affected by the indoctrination of students through a secular, anti-God science education. It's interesting because the Gallup researchers themselves said, belief that God created humans in their present form decreases as education increases. So we're not the only ones making that conclusion. Obviously, these researchers, the evidence was pretty clear. The effects of this change, though, have been frightening. During the same time frame, from 2007 to 2017, the National Center for Health Statistics reported that suicide rates for persons aged 10 to 24 increased from 6.8 per 100,000 to 10.6 per 100,000. With suicide surpassing homicide rates among this age group during this same time for the first time. More kids between 10 and 24 dying from suicide than dying from homicide. In addition, drug overdose deaths, as you'll see there, in 2017 increased to 21.7 per 100,000 persons, up from approximately 8 per 100,000 in 2005. So drug overdose deaths tripled in that same time frame. Now, undoubtedly, new pressures came on the youth as they go through this time, as they begin to grow up and experience the world for the first time. So there definitely are new pressures, but just when these new pressures hit them, they're being denied the hope that belief in God can offer them. When they need it most, they're being encouraged to discard Him or to reconcile their religious belief with an anti-God theory of human history. Both of these events, the increase in suicide rates and the increase in drug overdose deaths, demonstrate a profound loss of hope. They genuinely feel like today is terrible, horrible, and tomorrow will just be more of the same. Because they don't have access to the only one who can say, miraculously, I can make tomorrow better. It genuinely could be better than today, in spite of everything that's happening. When God is discounted and dismissed, there is no hope for many of these young people. High schools and universities all over the country have already or are now giving in to the pressure to teach these theories. Some of the most disturbing information, perhaps, is the current efforts that are largely led by academic institutions and teachers' unions. However, they have been emboldened by the attitude of the public. A People for the American Way poll conducted in 2000 found that 20% of those surveyed believe that only evolution should be taught in class. Another 29% felt that evolution should be taught, but mentioning creationism as a belief was acceptable. A further 17% believed that God-directed creation should be taught in religion class, while evolution was taught in a science class. So increasing that supposed separation between hard science and belief. This is among average Americans. A 2017 article published by the National Center for Biotechnology Information and the American Society for Cell Biology, sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, encouraged teachers to provide religious role models who accept evolution and to use what they call cultural competence as a tool to discourage disagreement with evolution. These practices were developed into a procedure called RECCE, R-E-C-C-E-E, that leads university teachers through 6 processes to indoctrinate students and gain acceptance of evolution. Among them, encourages the promotion of the idea that rejecting evolution is culturally intolerant. If you deny somebody else's belief in evolution, you're a bigot. You're closed-minded. You're not being tolerant. And encourages differentiation between atheistic evolution and theistic evolution. So starts proposing the idea that we just believe that God used evolution to bring about His creation, in spite of the fact that they acknowledge that they do not believe theistic evolution is compatible with evolution. So it's the straw man, as my wife says, it's the entry drug. Give them theistic evolution, and then you can change them over to atheistic evolution afterwards. They've also developed measuring standards within the schools. The measure of acceptance of the theory of evolution, MATE. the inventory of student evolution acceptance, IC, and the generalized acceptance of evolution evaluation. They've actually created a measurable process to evaluate how they're doing at introducing evolution to kids. So students are made to feel guilty for their belief in God using the principle of cultural competence. Christians don't want to feel like they're being unfair or they're being mean to somebody or intolerant, so they often fall prey to these attacks. In this case, tolerance is being replaced by acceptance with the knowledge that absolute truth exists. There is no need for acceptance of this false belief. This doesn't mean that there should be intolerance. Allowing others to believe as they choose and being tolerant of those who believe, being tolerant of those beliefs is an important principle. But accepting those beliefs when they are in opposition to known absolute truths is not. Believing in absolute truth does not make anyone a bigot or intolerant. There should be no confusion between absolute truth, which is our belief, and tolerance, which is how we behave towards others with different beliefs. So the discussions of theories like evolution, even if it's unproven, is the norm for science. Theories are often discussed and reviewed prior to being proven. That happens in science. Theories are discussed. However, it's considered prudent to review the ramifications of teaching a theory as fact before we embrace it, particularly in universities that are sponsored by religious institutions. If there was an expectation that teaching the idea of evolution would have a damaging effect on the belief of students attending the institution, then it would be reasonable to not embrace the unproven theory as fact. When we look at this data, there seems to be this correlation. Why would we even allow the process to move forward? Especially if the reason students were attending the institution was because of its religious affiliation. As I researched, all of the religious schools that are considered top-tier schools have evolution as part of their curriculum. Every one of them. You have to move to what's considered the second-tier schools to be able to go to a school that will actually teach biblical truth and will abandon evolution. Hence, going to Liberty University, considered by many to be a second-tier school, but Bible teaching school. At some stage, a tipping point will be reached where so many people have been indoctrinated into evolution and scientism and its necessary rejection of biblical creation that even rewriting the curriculum will not turn the tide. With so many parents being the product of these same institutions, resistance to these theories is declining, as has been reported by the universities themselves. It's amazing. They'll actually release reports on acceptance of evolution in their schools, in their science departments. Perhaps a realization of what this trend has cost our children can turn the tide. There are many who may not be convinced by the decline in regular church attendance, but the increase in suicide and drug-related deaths that has accompanied it should cause anyone to reconsider the cost of allowing an unproven theory to fully consume our educational institutions. So our hope is that as we begin to speak truth, that then we can begin to soften hearts, allow the Spirit to work within the lives of parents and of their children, and hopefully begin to replace some of that dialogue and some of that noise. But it all begins, unfortunately, with us recognizing what the costs have been. So this is an important work. We are grateful for everybody who is here to help us to spread this message and to help to educate and to share the information that they have learned. Faith and science, it requires a synthesis, not a compromise. When we talk about reconciling, unfortunately, this is not, evolution and scientism are not something for us to reconcile ourselves to. But it is worthwhile for us to find the synthesis of faith and science. The method I would like to encourage as we go through this conference, as you consider facts, and I use that term very, very narrowly. Those things that are measurable, confirmable, you can observe, and you can record, and can be duplicated. Facts. as you look at the facts, I would encourage you to, at the same time that you include the observed data from the geological column, the observed data from looking at fossils, the observed data from looking at our creation and the world that we live in, that you include in your list of facts and of truths the Bible as an accurate record. Unfortunately, we spend too much time after we have already looked at the data, we try to shove God and His Word into the cracks, instead of understanding that it's actually at the beginning of the process, one of the fundamental truths that needs to be considered when we're evaluating the data. And as you go through this conference, I think you're going to see lots of ways that that truth can be applied to give you a better conclusion.